Well, welcome everyone. You are listening to a career advice webinar by the Royal Australian Chemical Institute, the professional association for chemists in Australia. I'm Dr. Yvonne Mah, Business Development Manager at BSF and committee member of the RACI Careers Development Program. Tonight we will be talking to Dr. Philip Abraham during this month's Ask Me Anything segment. Starting off in India, where he obtained his PhD, Philip came to Australia, got his big break working in the Australian industry, and is now Senior Vice President for Veolia in Asia. Philip has been an international success story working in Australia, Paris, and Hong Kong. As a professional in STEM, we will have the opportunity to ask Philip all about his career, the highlights, the challenges, and what he has experienced to get to where he is today. Before we start this evening's panel session, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting all around Australia. We recognise the elders past, present and emerging, and also recognise their contributions as Australia's first scientists and engineers, building a healthy and safe community, what they've done and what we can still learn from their ways. We would like to also thank the sponsors of RACI's Careers Development Program, DCS Technical Envirolab and Laboratory Credit Union. Philip, we thank you very much for joining us tonight. Welcome. We were just wanting to get you to give us a 2-minute introduction about yourself.
Yes. Thanks, Yvonne. At the outset, again, let me thank RACI for this opportunity. I really feel privileged to be part of this gathering. Dave and I go back a long time, so thanks, Dave, for roping me in and coordinating this with Yvonne. As far as my brief history goes, I was born in India. As Yvonne said, I did my PhD there. I taught for a while. I was actually in academics. I was in the faculty of the university and a research institute. And then I left to Australia and worked there first again in academics and then moved into industry. Mm-hmm. I got the opportunity to actually travel with work or move with work to Paris, where I was there for 10 years. And for the last 4.5 years, I've been in Hong Kong. Happy to get into the details as we go along, Yvonne. So yeah, that's just really briefly my travel path, so to say.
Thanks for that. It's been a challenging year, more for some than others. How has it been for you, your colleagues and family during this global pandemic?
Yeah, it's definitely been a tough year for everyone, considering that we are able to talk about this topic and talk with others on the call. I consider myself lucky when compared to many others. So my heart really goes out to those who've lost people, lost friends and family through this crisis. My deepest condolences. But thankfully, my family has been safe and we're quite okay. So yes, it's I think we all are lucky to have this opportunity to talk together about rather than worrying about what's happened around us. So
yeah, I think it's important that we feel grateful for what we have. This is all part of the experience and advice to our audience. When you came to Australia with a PhD and you had several years of industrial experience in India, why did you choose Australia?
Yeah, you can say I was actually young then and bored and looking out for adventures. And but it was more what may have or could have turned out to be a tragic story. It was actually a personal situation where my niece was diagnosed with a serious illness. So I chose Australia basically to support the family. Thankfully, she's okay. She's still doing well. So what actually prompted me fast forwarding my adventure plans was actually this situation. So it was family that brought me into Australia, and I think I was again lucky to have had the opportunity to move to Australia then.
Yeah. How did you find this first international transition?
Right. The first international transition was Thankfully, not that difficult from a language perspective. We all spoke the language, so that was okay.
Mhm.
Culturally, the love of cricket bonded us to the Australians as well, coming from India.
Yeah.
And it was quite a welcoming feeling. I never felt out of place. I think the challenge was to break into the workforce. But other than that, I think the international experience, yes, it does come with its challenges. I mean, when you pack all your life belongings into 2 suitcases and start from scratch again,
Yeah.
it comes with its challenges. But on the whole, compared to some of my other experiences, I think Australia was really welcoming and easy to slide in and enjoy the experience.
Yeah. Actually, on that note, we got a question, and the question is about how did you enjoy your first Australian winter?
The first, I think more than remembering the first Australian winter, I remember the first really summer Christmas that we had. It was a bit of a change that we had. Dave, I actually worked with Dave. I think my first Australian thing. So yeah, it was I came from a city in India where the average temperature was 40 degrees for 3 months at a stretch.
It's hot.
So yeah, it was cold, but then when you're younger, you probably enjoy it a little more than probably now.
Yeah.
If I had to do that again. But then I got trained back in Europe for even colder winters. So,
Yeah.
it pales into significance what
Yeah.
went through.
How did you get your first start into the Australian industry?
Right. So actually, that's a interesting story. Interesting because it touches someone who's on the call, someone who's arranged this thing with you, Yvonne, David Samet. He's actually touched my career twice. So the first break was I was actually struggling to get into the workforce, and I'm sure some of the participants might relate to that. So I just went into the University of New South Wales, was wandering around the corridors, wondering what next, and I found the name of a professor whose work I referred to for my PhD. So I didn't know him, didn't have an appointment, knocked on his door. He welcomed me in and we had a chat. And then I ended up actually working working in his laboratory as an honorary research fellow for a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
And there I met a gentleman, Don Craig, who was actually David Samet's father-in-law. So got to meet him, and then he referred me to Dave, who was hiring chemists at that stage. And then so I did the interview, got the job, and that was my first break into the industry of Australia, and for which I am grateful to this day. And I think it's something I'd like to touch on later as well.
Yeah. Just going into the area of diversity, which is a very big topic for everyone. Have you ever experienced or witnessed discrimination at some point in your career based on gender, race, age?
I think discrimination exists everywhere, no matter which society you live in, which country you live in. I would like to think that a lot of it is because of ignorance. And this is something which I've learned to attribute it to ignorance rather than hatred, or at least what I've witnessed. I think the important thing there is to be comfortable with yourself. Accents are something that you're often discriminated against. But I've not changed my accent from when I lived in India or went to France, because I'm comfortable with it. Everyone has an accent, is what I tell myself. Everyone speaks English differently. And who is there to say that my accent is better or worse than someone else's? So I refuse to get bothered by that. And once you're comfortable with yourself, and this is the advice I would give, because I'm sure many of you have experienced this in different ways. And the best thing is to not let it get into your head and make you react and and feel bad about it. Feel comfortable with who you are and what you bring into this world. And but having said that, don't become a doormat either,
Yeah.
because there are times where you have to stand up for yourself and let the others know that you're not there to be pushed around or trodden upon. So this is something that I think with age you learn to handle things better. When you're young and a bit hot-blooded, that's when these things get into your head. So yeah, that's so the short answer, Yvonne, is yes, it exists. It's
Mm-hmm.
there. But I would say don't let it affect you if it's not serious enough, obviously.
Yeah. So with your international experience, what was it like the second time around?
The second time around was a completely different challenge. Just visualize this thing. I was actually moving from one end of the world to the other, so from Sydney to Paris.
Mm-hmm.
It takes 24 hours in the plane. Forget the changes of planes, the transition times. So 24 hours in the plane, other end of the world, with no language skills at all. So I didn't speak a word of French when I went there.
Okay.
And those of you who have lived in France know that the French are not that forgiving for those who don't speak French. You are expected to know the language, which I think is normal. I mean, in Australia, you wouldn't try to speak in French just because a Frenchman landed at your workplace. So that really made the challenge quite interesting, difficult at times.
Mm-hmm.
But as most difficult challenges, I think when you come out on the other side, it's one of the most rewarding experiences as well.
Yeah.
And not only we would classify that as one of the better periods of my life. So I actually went there with my wife, my son who was 12, who didn't want to move for various reasons, obviously, and to displace the entire family and sort of swim without anyone. So it disrupted our social life completely.
Yeah.
It took away all the interactions we could have with people, face-to-face interactions. But then we actually stuck it out, and we lived there for 10 years. So
Wow.
if we did live for 10 years, it should tell you that it couldn't have been difficult all the 10 years.
Yeah.
And I did have a choice to bail out if I couldn't handle it. So yeah, compared to the Australian experience, a lot more challenging, a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
But then, as you say, I mean, it's the long and windy roads that sometimes are more interesting than the easy straight runs.
Yeah.
So discovering the resilience and the will to discover a new culture, a new language, it was actually really good, really nice experience. And I came away with also the confidence that I will survive anywhere, no matter what the challenges are. It's not arrogance, it's more you're being pushed to the limit. So nothing much is going to get you or bother you. So it's that quiet confidence that comes with winning a tough battle.
Yeah. And you come across also positive and optimistic. So you look at challenges in a positive way. It's good. Based on your response, we got a question from Janice. How did you feel about moving far away from your family and friends for your career for an extended period of time?
Yeah, any of you, if you're married with kids, I think you need to be careful of one thing, is that, when I moved, I had my career, I had my job, I was fulfilled, I was excited, I was doing things. I destroyed the career of my wife totally. I sort of pull her leg and tell her that not only do I get blamed, I get blamed for her having a holiday in France, but it wasn't a holiday for her. It was tough. So the weakest link in any of such movements is the rest of the family. And if I had my time again, I would actually keep that in mind when I move, to make sure that it's not that the whole family tries to actually benefit from it as well, or make sure that they're not alone and feel lonely. So I think my son was the one who came out the best out of this move because, as a 12-year-old, when he got through the first challenges, it's now opened his perspective on life and people. So he's come out like a global citizen right now. But I think my wife definitely, it is something that we have to factor in when we make these moves.
Thanks for sharing that. That's really humble to know that and for you to let us be aware of that. Another question is, was there planning in your career progression or was it opportunistic? How did you plan it?
Yes, Yvonne, if you actually ask me, did I actually plan everything I got to do? The easy answer is no, I didn't. I had absolutely no intention of, I wanted to leave India at some point. As I said, I was young looking for adventure. So that was sort of planned. But career-wise, definitely not. I had no intention to move to France. Apparently, I did well in my job in Australia, so they wanted me in head office. So that's how I got pulled out there. I didn't know, I'm sure many of you would think I'm exaggerating, but it's the absolute truth. Instinctively, I knew this was a great opportunity. I did a quick risk assessment on what could go wrong, and I put some things in place to make sure that, for example, I knew I didn't have language skills, so I asked for language lessons. I did tell you I had an option to bail out because I said, if I don't like it there, can I come back? And I put that in my contract. So I took care of the major risks that were actually out there. But did I plan the next moves? I didn't. And that's an important lesson I'd like to share with others is that, you need to be hungry to do your best. I don't believe in luck. I think you make your luck to a large extent. It's those that are hungry that sometimes notice opportunities, but because these opportunities come fleetingly in front of you and they disappear if you don't grasp them. So I must be honest enough to admit that I didn't plan any of this. I didn't want to do everything that I did because I didn't dream that I could do everything that I did. I worked hard. I think I'm lucky to be in a great company that recognizes people who bring value. And they dared to put me in positions where many other companies would not have done so. So I was blessed with that sort of experience as well. And again, I don't know whether any questions around that. It's about getting outside your comfort zone and daring to do things which could seem frightening. You doubt yourself whether you can do some of what you do. But then it's always to have that belief in yourself and to be comfortable with yourself, to know exactly what you bring anywhere. And once you're like that, then it's easier to calm your nerves and seek the next challenge. So sorry for the long answer, but I just wanted to say that no, I didn't plan it at all. Was I lucky? Yes, to some extent you can say I was at the right place at the right time. But having said that, I know that luck is also made. You work hard, show the value, and then it's difficult not to be given the opportunities. And then you need to have the courage to get out of your comfort zone and do things.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's really a good insight. I'm sure that you gave good details there, so that's good for the audience. How pivotal was networking in your early career development?
Absolutely important, and this is where I'd like all the mentees who are in this program to really embrace this opportunity that you've been given with the mentoring program, with your career development program. A lot of what happens around us is because of personal context. I mean, you need to be, I'm sure you know that, but just keep that always burnt into your brain that, don't hesitate to knock on doors that sometimes seem scary to knock on. Ask yourself the question, what's the worst thing that can happen? It's just that the door won't open. And then you're no worse off than if you didn't knock. So there's nothing going to happen because you knocked. So networking, getting to know people, to participate in such things are extremely important. I got my break into the workforce because I I went and joined the University of New South Wales and met Don there. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have met Dave.
Mhm.
And if I hadn't met Dave, I wouldn't have got my opportunity with Veolia again, because that's another story which I love to share at some point.
Yeah.
And you know, the place where I work as well, it's a company that's built on relationships.
Mhm.
And the more you know people, the more work gets done, more efficient you are in your work. So you might think it sometimes as a waste of time. I'd rather bury my head and read my books, or just do my work,
Yeah.
because I'm not an extroverted person. You might think that, but even if you're an introverted person, and believe me, I'm one of the most introverted persons you can find.
Mhm.
But then you get used to having to make these connections, and it definitely goes a long way in not only opening up doors for you, but also getting better at your job.
Yeah. So, Philip, now we've got lots of questions since you've given so much insight and getting lots of interest. One from Catherine. Have you ever felt the need to seek out mentors along your career paths, especially mid-career? If so, what was the process for seeking suitable mentors?
Um, Catherine, if I may just be honest with you, that's something that I missed in my life. I didn't have the mentors to guide me through the challenges at work. The age that I worked, you sort of figured out these things by yourself. You learned how to cope with things. I think empathy is a thing that
Mm.
you learn. So that helped me in managing myself, managing others. You know, when you empathize with your team, when you treat them as you want to be treated,
Mm.
it works. But I didn't know that when I was a young guy. I just started off, and I worked a lot by instinct. Then again, I was lucky enough to be trained in good universities, um, uh, by doing the exec programs and so on. So I acquired the skills on the job. Um, and that's exactly the reason why I spend a lot of my time mentoring people at work today. I think that it's really, really important, and I think this should be standard practice. And I think, and you know, one of the reasons why I do this, to be honest, is you know, David Samet showed me kindness in many ways when I worked with him, and I think that if we all carry it on in our lives, and touch others' lives, then the world gets to be a better place. You know,
Yeah.
Yvonne, you're giving your time for the mentoring program, and I hope the mentees around on this call realize that, and when they are in a position to do the same, please do it.
Mm.
Because you know, this sort of experience of older people, there has to be some advantage of having these gray hairs on my head, and if you can only be there for the young people who could really do with this mentoring, it would help. So, Catherine, it does exist in some companies, and now we do have a formal mentoring program where I work. But don't take that for granted always. If you have it, don't take it for granted.
Yeah.
It's not the normal sometimes.
Mm.
And when you get into a position where you can, even when you're young, you can still mentor people. And by the way, I'm doing something, an interesting exercise. I'm the oldest person in my team, and I have people in the ranging from the 20s to 30s. And I've given them an assignment to teach me something that I don't know. So I'm going to spend an hour with them where it's their task to teach me something that I don't know anything about. And I think that's the brilliant thing about mentoring. It's a two-way process.
Mm.
You learn so much from your mentees. You learn to be a mentor. You learn to be a better person. So I'm going to try this experiment, and I'm happy to share my experiences there. And they are quite excited about it because they're all ganging up on me and saying, let's see what we can teach Philip. So
Yeah.
I think, Catherine, is a really, really important part of work. As I said, see it as a privilege that you have this platform managed by the RACI.
Mm.
And when you are in a position to do the same, please do extend that to others.
Yeah. Thanks very much for that. We have another question from Daika. What advice would you give international students who want to build up their career pathway in Australia?
Yeah. So the first thing that if you've decided to make Australia your home, and I presume that's the case, the first thing is to relate to the local culture. It's great to bring our cultures with us. It's great to not give that away. That's okay not to give that away. At the same time, don't be an island where you want to live the same way in an isolated way when you're in a new country. Try not to compare your culture with the other. Embrace difference and say it's different. Don't say it's good or bad. Make that a habit for you. Just say when you see something different, don't say it's good or it's bad. Just say it's different. When you learn to embrace the differences, you integrate better into the society. And when you integrate better to society, people accept you a lot more easily. And when people accept you a lot more easily, you get opportunities that sometimes you don't get because they think you don't fit into their workforce. So I think a lot of the effort goes to the immigrants who come in. Yes, it's extremely difficult actually to sometimes find work. The first 3 months of my first move were the toughest, was one of the toughest periods in my life. But as I said, the important thing is never to give up. Learn the culture, integrate into culture, and then giving up is not an option. Just fry that into your brain. And when you decide it's not an option, it's not an option to give up. Yeah. So once you do that, and and the first job is always going to be the most difficult thing. You get into the first job, don't be choosy, don't be picky, don't turn down opportunities just because you think you're too qualified or you're too big for this position. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just get into the workforce, get that local experience, because the uniqueness of the Australian job market is that when you come in for the first time, every company will ask you for a local experience. And how are you going to get your first local experience without getting your first job? So it's a vicious cycle. So you need to break that cycle and get into it. And volunteering is another way of actually breaking that cycle, because that's what I did with the University of New South Wales. I went in, I done my PhD. I expected to walk into a job, which I didn't. But then I realized very quickly that if I don't get a local referee, I'm never going to break into the workforce. So my advice to you is, any opportunity is okay. Just take it. Work hard, show your value, and other doors will open for you.
That's very good. We've got a question here it's anonymous. What type of work did you initially do in Australia as a research fellow and then in industry? And how closely related was it to your PhD?
That's a really nice question. Thank you for the question. Now, what did I do in the University of New South Wales? As I said, I knocked on the doors of Professor Ian Dance. He's a really lovely gentleman. He almost apologized to me saying, I don't have any funds to pay you, Philip, but, and I told him it's okay. I was very honest with him. I said, I want some local experience. I want you to be my referee. So I got in, he gave me a project to work on. I would say related to my PhD, yes, but that was only for 2 months. And then, as I said, I met Dave and I worked as a chemist, and I worked as a chemist on shifts, on night shifts, day shifts. And I came in from a fairly privileged background in India. It was tough. It was not what I thought I would be doing. But I was grateful. I was so grateful for the opportunity, and I really worked hard. And they would probably tell others that I did well there. And was it related to my PhD? Yes, in some ways, because when you talk about your PhD, I did it in organometallic chemistry, right? But for me, a PhD is a problem handling device. It just helps you handle problems in life, because you deal with a lot of complex problems. You break them down into small bits, solve them, and then you put them all better together again, and the problem is solved. So it's a similar thing at work. When you have a complex problem, you break it down. So do I actually use my organometallic skills now? I don't. But do I use the experiences that I've learned during my PhD? Of course I do, every day. So Yvonne, you'll probably relate to that as well. I think you said you did yours in electrochemistry or something, and so it's probably not what you do today on a day-to-day basis. But those experiences are invaluable. Any experience in life is invaluable.
Yeah.
So that's what I did in Australia. And my message to all of you is don't be choosy, don't be picky, don't think that you're too big or too important or too qualified to do anything. Others might think you're overqualified sometimes, and that's an excuse that's often handed out. But that doesn't matter. Just put your head down, grab the first chance you get, and then other doors would open for you.
That's so good. Thank you. We've got a question which relates to it from Noreen. What networking tips would you give to students and early career chemists?
Yeah, so I didn't have some of the opportunities that you. Sorry, who was the person, Yvonne?
Noreen.
Noreen, I didn't have the opportunities that you have, for example, on this call. And again, I didn't mention it earlier. My thing is keep your eyes and ears open. Use your, the LinkedIn and the other platforms that you get hooked on. Spend your time, some of your time for the mentoring programs, and because you get to meet other people. So when you're a young graduate and you're trying to, break into the workforce, as we said earlier, networking is extremely important. And then don't hesitate at any point to ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. We all understand it. We've all been in situations where we've got help from others. And as I said before, what's the worst thing that can happen? Someone's going to say no, but that's okay. You try with someone else, right? So just keep that positive attitude, and again, always be conscious of the value that you bring. Sometimes you wonder, am I going to be able to do this job? Or you have questions of self-doubt and things like that. And especially when you're down, when you don't get those opportunities, don't give up. Because life is about, there's nothing permanent in this world. When you're going through a challenging period, remember that that's going to end. It will end. It always has. If you look back in your life and look at the other challenging moments, they've all ended, right?
Yeah.
It's also important to know that your good moments also don't last forever. So when you have your good moments, ride the wave and make maximum use of it. But always remember at the back of your mind, it's not going to last forever. And then when you're sort of going without, hitting cloud nine when you're doing well and going down to the depths of the earth when you have your challenge, helps you to be a little more composed and controlled in the way you handle challenges.
Oh, definitely. This leads to two questions. They relate. Have you ever experienced conflict in the workplace? What if your boss is terrible?
That's a really good thing, because let me start with the second question. What if your boss is terrible? I've actually mentioned this to a lot of my younger mentees at work, telling them that a terrible boss is actually a gift for you, especially when you're early in your career, because at least he or she would be teaching you constantly on how not to behave when you become a boss. Invaluable lessons, because most of the time people teach you how to be nice, how to take care of others. But when you get a boss who's actually difficult, use that as a learning experience. Learn how to manage your boss, because you need to manage up as well as down and on with your peers as well. So don't get bothered by it. Just tell them this is going to be a tough exercise. I'm going to learn from it. I have a concept called the global happiness package. Your boss is not everything, right? You have other aspects of your job that I hope, are fulfilling for you. So when your global happiness package, which consists of your boss, your salary, your work-life balance, whether you're learning or not, all of these combined, when your global happiness package is positive, you will continue in your job, and then use your boss as your learning opportunity. So conflict at work always happens. It's not only avoiding conflict, it's also managing conflict. That's really important that you do. So my principle is I never throw the first punch. I try not to cause conflict at work. Sometimes you can actually duck and weave and avoid conflict. You don't have to react to things, you can keep quiet. But sometimes you have to manage conflict. And this is what I said earlier, don't become a doormat either. One of the things I let my colleagues and others know, that my teeth are not only for smiling, it's for biting as well. And when I bite, it's painful. So people rather not have me bite. So it's a bit of a balance. Don't start your unnecessary battles. At the same time, don't become a doormat.
Yeah, that's really good. What do you wish that you had known when starting out your career?
Starting out my career, as I said, one of the important lessons was the fact that nothing is permanent. And this is why I was actually emphasizing that when you're going through a rough patch, hang in there, it's going to pass. When you're in the heat of the moment, sometimes you let things get to your head. Remember this: when things are moving rapidly around you, if you start moving as well, the emotions are amplified. So don't try to keep still when things are moving around you. So when you learn to keep still, when you learn to not let the stress get into your head, it's a lot easier to handle a situation. And the other really important lesson I learned is don't keep your keys of happiness with yourself. Don't give away your keys of happiness to anyone. So when you're having a rough day, when you're having a thing, don't get unhappy, because you should keep your keys of happiness with you. Don't give it to your boss. Don't give it to your colleagues who are irritating you. Learn to not waste happiness.
Yes. We got a question from Dan. He says, I know my transition from the USA to Australia was a way of work and mental adjustment for me, and knowing that other Veolia Australian colleagues were able to have a Veolia international career. Did you find your Australian mindset and skill set were a valuable asset for the transition, or did you find the cultures required you to retrain and reset? That's from Dan.
Thanks, Dan. It's actually a bit of both, I would say. And when you lived in multiple cultures, one of the things that comes to your advantage is people can't put you in a box. People really didn't know whether I was Indian, whether I was Australian, whether it was French, European, or Hong Kong. They just don't know who I am, which actually is an advantage when you work in a very competitive world where your enemies are plotting to take you down. Sometimes it's to your advantage. So I used that a lot to my advantage when I was in France. In France, because in Australia we are a 0-1 society. You either say yes. A yes means a yes, a no means a no. There's nothing in between. Whereas in India and in France, you always have these degrees of 0. You have a 0.5, a minus 0.5, a 1.5. So it's never a clear answer to some of the questions. So when you manage a team, sometimes it's just easier to say, I'm Australian. I don't understand this scales of gray. You just have to do this, and I use my 0-1 cultural background to get things done. Having said that, it's fascinating to learn the local culture as well, and then take the best out of that into your work skills, and then that will come handy to you in other situations as well. So yes, the Aussie experience did help me. Gave me also a sense of international experience, confidence, and all that comes with it. But I can't be 100% Australian in France. I wouldn't have been able to handle that. So you need to adapt as well to the local culture. So use your experiences to help you settle in faster and to do well in a new place.
Yeah. So all those experiences help to build your international career, you would say?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's part of the growing experience.
And what has been the highlight of your career so far and the biggest challenge?
So the highlight, I don't want to sound as if I'm boasting, but I did have a fantastic career path. I moved quite rapidly up the corporate ladder, but that was not the highlight of my career. The highlight of the career for me is when I've had the opportunity to impact lives, impact people, especially the young people. When you change someone's life positively forever, it even lives beyond my time. All the money and power and glory you make in your corporate life ends with you when I die. However, if you're able to touch someone's life and change it positively, that person will never forget you even after I die, I hope. So that for me is the most humbling and powerful experiences when you are able to actually do something that makes someone's life better for their lifetime. And again, as I said, David actually, I did mention it. He gave me the first break, but he also gave me the second break. He went in for a interview with a company. He listened to them and he told them, "Look here, my current situation is I don't want to take this, but I have someone else who can, I'm sure, can do this job." And he actually connected me with that company, which is Veolia. So it's funny how David's kindness of heart, twice over, has changed my life, and this is something which I always carry with myself. So, to answer your question, Yvonne, the highlight of my career is actually the fact that I had the opportunity in my work to be able to impact people's life. And what's been the biggest challenge? I think my French experience, the experience in a country without language skills, far away from home, was the biggest challenge. But as I said before, it's also one of the most rewarding experiences I've had as well. So it's come as a package.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Um, what has there been a time in your career where you faced disappointment? How did you handle the situation?
Uh, Disappointment comes often. I mean, you sometimes you're disappointed with yourself because you haven't done things as well as you could have. Sometimes you're disappointed because others have not given you the opportunities. Sometimes you're disappointed because you never find work. I was really disappointed when I was actually applying for jobs, and when I came to Australia, I didn't even get an interview call, and that's quite disturbing because you can do something, but you don't even get a call in. Sometimes you don't get a door open, and that can be frightening also at moments. And this is what I was saying earlier. Don't let it get into your head because those times will pass. You just need to keep pegging away. Don't give up. Don't think that giving up is an option. Disappointments are not the things that make you. In fact, it helps enrich your resilience and use all of these learning, these challenges or disappointing situations as learning experiences. And when you start looking at life like that, the disappointings seem less disappointing, if you know what I mean. The disappointments seem less disappointing. I've learned to actually reprogram my thinking to some extent. When something goes wrong, I try to see what could I have done to make things better the next time if it came around. And when you do that, then you don't see these disappointments with all its negativity as well. It's just a coping mechanism which has worked for me. And I would suggest you try that with yourselves as well. I mean, don't let it get into your head. As I said, keep your keys of happiness with yourself. It's really important.
Yes, it is important to maintain your good well-being and keep happy. Um, we know hindsight is a wonderful thing, but if you had to write a current letter to your younger self, what advice would you give to yourself and others? And this question is from Dan.
Thanks, Dan. I think I know a Dan whom I worked with, and maybe the same Dan. Um, if I had my time again, I would probably have fast forwarded some of the uh, changes that I've gone through in life because these are wonderful experiences. I waited till I was around 30 when I made my first move.
Yeah.
If I had my time again, I would probably do it earlier. Yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind. The other thing that comes to mind is, and this is really important, everyone, please keep this in mind. I am not good at life-work balance. When you start off in your career and you move once and you're trying to make a living, trying to support the family, put food on the table, sometimes you forget your other priorities. It's easy for me to look back and say, well, I didn't have a choice. I had to fight my way out of and get into a job and feed the family. But if I had my time again, I should have spend time more with the family, spend time more watching my son grow, and being there for my wife a little more. So this is something, being very honest, I've not, even with all the mentoring and advising I give others, I haven't learned the art of a good life-work balance. So don't take that lightly. I think that's very important, um, to be mindful of the rest of your ecosystem around you, especially your family. It's not an excuse enough to say it's because of work. I know that work still would have been there. I didn't probably have to. It was just, it almost becomes an addiction. You know, even
Yeah.
now I leave home at 6:30 in the morning. There's no one who asks me to come in at 6:30, but I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I don't get away till late in the evening because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a weakness which I would have liked to handle better. And I think the earlier you start, the better it is. And interestingly, when I do interviews now with younger people, they're bold enough and brave enough to tell me that at interviews. I ask them, what is it that's important to you? What brings you to work every day? How do you get your energy? These are some of the questions I ask during an interview, just to know how they think.
Mm.
And I've heard this response more than once, saying that, for me, life work balance is really important. And I think in my head, good on you, because it's good to start there. Even when they're looking for work, they've said that. Now, don't be foolish about it, and don't give away opportunities, uh, especially for your first job. But be conscious about it. When you know that you're going down that path where you're getting addicted to work, try to pull yourself back a little. And the easiest way to do that is to focus on family as well. I consider the different pillars in your life. Work is only one pillar. You have society, you have family, you have the other things around you, whatever you choose. But if you put all of your energy into one pillar, your building gets unbalanced a bit. There are weaknesses of the structure that it will not hold. So try to take all your pillars with you when you move through this journey of life.
That,
If you, sorry,
I was going to say that's a really good analogy to have that picture in your mind. The pillars, your life, your life of pillars.
yes.
Paying attention to each pillar.
I think
That's
it's very
good.
important, Ivan. I think in my younger days, I didn't realize that. I just
Mm.
thought that if I put everything into work,
Yep.
everything would be okay. Yes, life has been good because of that. I must confess. I mean, I was able to give my son and my wife a good quality of life. But I know I missed out on a lot of other things, and I know some of my other structures are a bit imbalanced because of that focus.
Yeah.
So, girls and boys, if you have your when you're
Yes.
starting off, keep that the pillars in your life equally balanced, and then your building also is a lot stronger.
That's great. This is a question from Sahil. We've just got another flood of questions in for you. Did you ever have a situation where you entered into a new role or a job and it didn't turn out the way you were expecting it? How did you handle it? And did you ever think of leaving or left the role or kept going?
Is it Zahir?
From Sahil, yep.
Yeah, Zahil. The thing about my career path is that every 3 or 4 years I've changed roles, and almost all of the time I haven't asked for the change. So you can quite imagine, you're often thrust into a role that sometimes you have even doubts on whether you can do it or not. Um, I've never given up. I've never walked away from a role change, simply because I sometimes tell myself, if my boss or someone upstairs has asked me to do something, it's because they've seen something in me which probably I haven't. And they're not doing it out of charity. They're doing it because they believe in that it can be done. So that's the most important thing I can tell you about, when you move your responsibilities. Feel confident to get out of your comfort zone. The easiest thing to do is to hide under the table and not stick your head out sometimes, right? But that's not the most rewarding experience. As I said, moving to France was extremely, and I didn't ask to be moved to France either. The company asked me to do it. So, and I didn't know whether I could do it. It was frightening. It was completely out of my comfort zone. But the important thing, again, as I said, is to be quietly aware of the value you bring into any role. And the rest of the things will take care of itself most of the time. And the another important thing is you're never too old to stop learning. Right now, one of my main job is to carry out the digital transformation of Veolia in Asia. And I joke about it. I say I don't even know how to spell digital, right? But what I bring into this role is my business knowledge, my life experiences, the fact that I've lived in multiple countries. And digital, at the end of the day, there's a huge aspect of business around it. I'm humble enough to ask people, to tell my young people in my team, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you please explain that in English? And they do that. So, and how am I able to do it? Is because I know what value I bring into the role, right? So that's the important thing about handling these situations where you get out of your comfort zone. Be aware of the value. Don't be hesitant to learn. Don't ever be ashamed to say, I don't know. But always try to find out. Never stop learning.
Yeah. On that, with the learning, Kim has asked whether you've written any books. Have you written any books?
So Kim, that's one of my list on my things on my bucket list. I haven't written any book as yet, but I'd love to write one. And I even know the title of the book that I want to write. It's about wasting happiness. The idea behind this is we spend a lot of time worrying about things we don't have. If we only focused on the blessings in our life, we would be a lot happier as people. When I'm having a bad day in the office, I close my door sometimes and I just count my blessings. And I realize that I'm one of the luckiest people I probably would have ever met in my life, even on a difficult day, with all the challenges and all the problems. And I've not had an easy life, mind you. It's not that I had a walk in the park all of my life. No, I had to really fight my way out of really difficult situations, challenging situations when I was young, personal and otherwise. So, but at every stage, if you always learn to count your blessings, you will see that life is really, that we are a lot luckier than what we think we are. So another thing I want to do is write about thoughts about things. And I've written a few things on LinkedIn about, ideas which I wanted to share. Then I stopped doing it because I just, it sounds so. Kim, to answer your question, one day when I finish my life with Veolia, perhaps I will sit down and put my thoughts down to paper, and hopefully you'll read it.
Yes, we've got to make sure we keep engaged. There's a question from Catherine about reading. What have you recently read or currently reading? What do you enjoy, fiction or non-fiction, and what do you recommend?
That's again one of the regrets that I have, that I used to read voraciously earlier. Now I spend a lot of my time reading about things digital and how to get better at my work.
Yeah.
I love the Harvard Business Review because there are wonderful articles there that come. But there's a book called The Element. Try to read it. It's about having the meeting point of your passion and what you're good at. And if you can find the element where your career is built around what you're good at, you'll really enjoy your career. And I think that's a really simple concept, but it's so meaningful when you actually think about it, because a lot of the time we think that we're not doing what we want to do. But if you are lucky enough to get into that spot, that sweet spot where you're doing what you're good at, enjoying it, that's when you say that you're in your element. The other thing, I think it's related to an earlier question. The other thing is you can actually bring elements. I had a mentee who told me that she wanted to be a ballet dancer, and now she's a data scientist. So I sat down with her and asked her, what is it that attracted you to be a ballet dancer? What is it that you wanted to do? And she said it was the fact that she could perform, be artistic, be in front of an audience and do all of that. And I told her, you can actually bring those elements into your work, even in an internship. So we gave her the opportunity to present to the company one of the projects she was working on. And we told her, go and build your own project and do something creative out of it. So what I'm trying to tell you that you can, even in your most boring job, you can bring elements of what you're good at into your job, and then you learn to enjoy it a little more. And that's why I do mentoring on teaching, because I come from a family of teachers, and I gave up an academic career to get into industry. But now what I do is do sessions like this, do guest lectures, mentor people, and that's bringing what I enjoy, and I hope what I'm good at into my job, and then it makes my job more enjoyable.
That's awesome. Maybe we just have this one question because we're going to be running out of time. This is from someone anonymous. After the PhD, when anyone is trying for any entry-level job, the interviewer asks the question, why does the job seeker want to get that opportunity after having that higher qualification? So how do you handle these situations or questions that come to you like that?
I don't know whether Dave would actually like to jump in and answer something, because he interviewed me when I was I had done my PhD. I'd actually come in to do an entry-level chemist position. The point I have to make about that is be honest about why you want the job, right? Don't try to be someone else. I don't know what I don't remember what exactly I told Dave, but he hired me as a PhD to do this, what I call as an entry-level chemist job. I knew I could do things more than that, and I knew I was qualified, but it didn't matter to me at that point of time because I was grateful for the opportunity that I had. So I sort of was natural about it, perhaps, and honest about it. I don't know, but I think Dave, as the last thing, you can probably jump in and answer that question. What is it that made you give a guy who was coming in, knocking on your doors, who'd done his PhD, to do what I was asked to do?
Well, I'm pleased to be able to say this, Philip, that you gave the most memorable interview that I have ever had in 25 plus years in my career. And it wasn't so much the interview or what you looked like on paper. It was this, that I had advertised for a research chemist. 2 words in the title, research and chemist. You called me up and like your application was fairly standard. Your first call was reasonably standard. You asked me some questions about the job and you asked me some questions about the chemistry that we were doing. So far, so good. It was a good but unremarkable approach. The key thing was you called me back 3 days later and you said the magic words. You said, I was really interested in our conversation. I can virtually verbatim quote this 20 something years later. I was really interested in our conversation. I made some notes after our call and I went to the library and I spent a day doing research. Now I would like to ask you these questions. In that single sentence, you had said, I am a research chemist who cares about this job. And that distinguished you not only from every other candidate for that job, but for virtually every other candidate ever since.
And the key thing is, Dave, I really wanted the job, to be honest. I was hungry for that opportunity. But I also wanted to be honest. I was actually, I think I remember what it was. I was embarrassed the fact that I couldn't answer all the questions you asked me. You asked me something about X-ray diffractometry, and I hadn't studied that. But I wanted to know what it was and how it was related to what you were doing, because I was interested in our conversation, and I instinctively, felt that I connected with you as well, and I wanted to work for you. So this is the thing. It's important for people to understand. Don't sometimes, get carried away by what's on paper. Don't even say this job is good or not good for me. If you really need it, go and get it, and be honest about it, and tell the interviewer honestly why you want it. And if you don't know the answer, it's okay, but then try to follow that up with learning things that you don't know, and then I think success will also come knocking. So again, Dave, mean it sincerely. Thank you for what you've done, and because of what you did, a lot of other people around this world are also benefiting from it.
Well, it's funny. I don't know if you even recall this, but you came to me one day and you said, Dave, I'm thinking about leaving this job. I've got another job virtually lined up in border security. You were going to work in the airport. And I felt heartbroken. I felt someone with your talent should be doing something better than border security. And it just happened that someone tried to headhunt me. In hindsight, maybe I should have taken the job. Maybe I'd be working in Hong Kong now.
Yep.
No, we know that's not true. We know I never would have excelled in that position the way that you did. I'd like everybody to know, Philip hasn't related, but in that first job, he was the first PhD that company, that site had ever hired. And because he was working in waste management, his nickname became on the site Dr. Sludge.
Yep, that's true. And I'm actually proud of that title because it sort of gave me a sense of authenticity on the site. Can I just say one last message to everyone, please? Guys and girls, if you found this thing useful, I would ask you to actually tell others to be part of this RACI mentorship program. You know, spread the word, because I think if you let other people know, more people will benefit. It's as simple as that. So to be honest, Yvonne and Dave have not asked me to do this, but I really think it's important that people have this sort of a safety net, someone to talk to, someone to bounce an idea of, ask a question, how can I open a door? You know, you can always reach out to me and ask me a question. I'm more than happy to answer them as honestly as I can. But you have a structure in the RACI thing. Make use of it and let other people know about it so that more people can benefit from it. Because this thing, when I was of your age, I didn't have, and it was very lonely. And because maybe life was tough and I was toughened, I came out on the other side. But many would find it extremely difficult without the support system. And when you have it, you use it. So I'm again speaking that quite sincerely. Make use of the opportunity that has been provided to you by the Career Development Program of RACI. And again, this is not a pitch that I was asked to do. I really mean what I say.
Well, we can tell, Philip. Thank you so much. We want to thank you for sharing all that. And Dave and I spoke about how in the era of sustainability, now sludge is evolving into treasure.
Absolutely. In
Dr.
fact,
Treasure.
Absolutely. In fact, we're called resources actually, because we stopped talking about waste management. We call ourselves resources.
Resource, exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
So it is a resource. And, we've just, Veolia has actually put out its purpose. And that's, I think, a wonderful thing, because when I started work, we had to imagine what the purpose was. Now the purpose of Veolia, one of the things mentioned is to actually improve human life. And it's quite humbling to know that, I'm in a profession that actually improves human life.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, water, waste, and energy is essential for human life.
Absolutely.
So this is a thing that, we're not waste management people. I think we try to do a little more than that. So thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Dave. Really enjoyed this chat. I hope the others have had too. And good luck in this amazing opportunity that you give young people. And I'm sure you'll be blessed for that.
Yes. Thank you, Philip, and sharing your career journey, and also showing us that it takes a lot of grit and a positive mind and optimism to be where you are now. Tonight has been another event as part of the RACI Careers Development Program. Through webinars, networking events, mentoring, lectures, and workshops, the RACI Career Development Program aims to help graduating students get the best possible start in their careers. So we've got some upcoming career events soon. Next week's webinar and the third installment of our Careers Outside the Lab, featuring Curiosity Show's Rob Morrison, which is on Thursday, 17th June, 6:30 p.m. Sydney time. I think it's all in the chat room as well to give you the details. There's also the Intensive Careers short course and workshop for active job seekers on Saturday, the 19th of June. So go on to the RACI events page for details. It'll be all there. Looking forward to you joining in that one. The recording of this event will be uploaded to the RACI Careers Development YouTube channel over the next few days, as well as to our careers site, which is www.dcstechnical.com.au/careers/. And in the meantime, our thanks to Philip Abraham for taking the time to be here, and to everyone to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye for now.